Well, a late election night that is, makes for a very long day, not only for politicians, but for political pundits who have been watching these races closely. John Bennett is the assistant professor of public administration in the Department of Public Affairs and Political Science at Savannah State University. He joins us now for a post-election conversation concerning results, reactions, and what happens next. It looks like, it seems like you were just here the other day because you were.
Right.
So let's start off by having a decision this early. No one expected the presidential race to be called as early as it was.
Right, and I talked with my students and I cautioned them to be patient. It would take a while because that was the conventional wisdom, that it would be a race that wouldn't be decided on election night. And we'll be picking over the details of why this occurred, but I think it does speak to the professionalism and dedication of poll workers who showed up and did their jobs. In the Atlanta area, we know there were multiple bomb threats. So there are people, our fellow citizens, who are very committed to making sure elections are free and fair. And I think we can attribute a lot of this to their dedication and their selflessness.
So speaking of who showed up, let's talk about the numbers in terms of who showed up, who didn't show up, and results from certain states.
Right. Well, we know that Trump gained votes, his vote totals in all but 2 states. So it's something that is a huge shift. We know apparently that people who are late making their decisions broke for Trump, it appears. But we have exit polling data. We have votes still being counted in some states. So there will be years and years and years poring over this data to understand how this result happened and how it happened so quickly.
Let's talk about Georgia, because in 2020, Biden won by a razor-thin margin. This time, though, the answer for Georgia, was loud and clear.
Right. There was lots of discussion where Georgia had turned the corner from being purple to blue, and the results in Georgia indicate that the gains that Democrats made in the last cycle appear to be transitory at this point.
So what was different during this cycle? What have we learned about all of this?
Right. Well, I tell my students, we looked at polls throughout the semester, and I told them there can be twists and turns, and you never know what's going to happen until election night. If we think about how this campaign, how this election has played out, with President Biden stepping down from the top of the ticket, assassination attempt on Trump, so things that you might happen seeing one time in an election cycle, everything came together. So there'll be a lot of attempts to indicate this was the turning point or this is what made the difference. But there's so many variables this time around that it's going to take a long time to sort it out.
So we saw some record number voting turnout. Do you think that this election has changed the way that voters will engage with the electoral process in the future, particularly young people?
Right. I would say that in lots of ways, all bets are off. This is a new landscape, which a lot of people are going to have to reacquaint themselves with. We obviously saw a lot of enthusiasm for young people and become engaged in the process. And because of Georgia was a swing state, we saw a lot of candidates come to our state and come to our city. So that is something that I think energized a lot of people, but it will be something that we have to figure out as we go forward.
Moving forward, what can we expect in terms of change, not only regarding the political landscape, but also the rules surrounding voting and voter integrity and voter security?
Right. I think those were all concerns. And again, there were problems in this election, the bomb threats in other places, but in other places of the state. But I think it's something that is going to be a continual process, that we have to make sure that people's votes are counted and counted correctly, and they have the opportunity to engage in the process.
What happens to the momentum, though? What happens to all of that momentum that built up around this election cycle?
Well, you're asking a question that I'm pondering for my next classes, because we will have some discussions about this. So it's something, again, that we're processing a lot of data points, and it is a historic election in many, many, many ways that we'll be parsing for years to come. So those are things I'll be thinking about before my next class, for sure.
Okay, so let's go to our local elections, because we saw one big upset, and that was with the sheriff's race.
Right, and I think that speaks to the fact that even when all eyes are on the presidential election, the down ballot races matter. And so I think people will be looking at that locally. We'll examine how that result came to be. But again, the big races often overshadow the local ones, but local ones are tremendously important.
Let's dig a little deeper into that, because that's what I was going to ask you about next. How important are those down ballot races?
Right. We talk to my students all the time about how government affects them at every level. So the district attorney, the sheriff, and the place that you live, no matter where you live, have a direct impact on your life.
Now, we know that the election season often extends beyond the election itself, and there needs to be time for folks to process things. The results and politics in general can spark a range of emotions. What advice do you have?
I think everybody handles these types of momentum shifts differently. And it's something that I will try to do with my students, to reserve time, to have people have a chance to just sit and think about things. There'll be a lot of calls to what should be done or shouldn't be done, depending on what side you're on. But a lot of people just need a little time right now. And that's the kind of graciousness I think we should extend to people who may be troubled with the result and struggling to figure out what they want to do next.
And as we prepare for January, what happens next? And are you concerned about anything January? You know what happened last election cycle.
Right. Well, again, there have been so many curveballs and so many once in a generation moments that happen. But so it's difficult to make those predictions. We'll be seeing over the coming months Trump's picks for cabinet positions and other positions. So, and I think that's the story that will give us a better picture of what he intends to do in a new term for him.
All right, Professor John Bennett, thank you so much
You're
for your
welcome.
time and for your insight. We appreciate you so much.
Thank you.
All right. Well, stay with us. You're watching News 3 Today at 11. We'll be right back.